بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. I want to welcome everybody to another morning of inspiration of the companions. It happened to coincide our discussion about the Prophet's character, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the character of the companions of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, specifically those who were blessed to carry on his message as a political authority, as a rule of law amongst people. And they felt very concerned about their responsibility in properly executing their responsibilities as leaders in the footsteps of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. So when we look at asceticism, or what we call Zuhd in the Islamic framework, there's a whole history of scholarship that talks about the boundaries and the what would be going to extreme and so forth and so on. And many of our scholars would say that the rightly guided caliphs went to extremes in their asceticism, meaning their rejection of worldly enjoyments and pleasures, and their desire to stay very deeply spiritual and to not become complacent or over comfortable with the things, the enjoyments that we have in this world that are available to us. And so when we look at Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anh, Zayd ibn Arqam, one of the great companions, he narrates the story that one time after Abu Bakr has become the caliph, he's now the responsible authority for the Muslims. Abu Bakr asked, "I'm thirsty, can you bring me some water?" And so someone went and got some cool water and then mixed it with some really good honey. And so they brought this jug of water that's mixed with honey, which, by the way, in the time of the Prophet ﷺ was just not common. And it was seen as more of a lofty or special treat. And so Abu Bakr then quenched all of his thirst. And by the time he finished taking down his final gulp of honey water, he started crying, and he just kind of broke down. The way the Arabic brings it is that he broke down, and he just and he's just gasping and crying in tears. And the companions, Zayd said, we were sitting around him, we started crying. We didn't know what was going on. We're not sure exactly what's happening. And so after it went on for a few moments, it became, now we're very concerned, is there something seriously wrong? So I asked Abu Bakr, what is wrong? He said, I remember in the time of the Prophet ﷺ that sometimes things would be brought to him, and then he would make the comment that I'm concerned that the world is being brought to me. I'm concerned that materialism is being brought to me. But by Alhamdulillah, by the thanks to Allah, I'm being protected from it. And so the commentators on the hadith say that the Prophet was expressing that he would sometimes indulge in some extra milk and some meats and things like that. And he would see that as a gift that is from Allah, but he would also see it as he wouldn't get caught up in it. And so that phrase got Abu Bakr really heavily thinking. He's knowing that he is not a prophet, and he will not necessarily be preserved from the world as the Prophet ﷺ was, that his heart was not cleaned out by the angels. And so Abu Bakr is now breaking down that now I became the leader and I'm drinking this really cool honey sweet water. What's next? What will come next? What will I be comfortable with? Will I be sitting on thrones and having, people waving those big leaves on me? What will be the case? And so Abu Bakr is deeply concerned about his state as a spiritual person, as a leader. And he felt the responsibility to protect the political rule from what he sees all over the imperial world. The empires are filled with lavishness and luxury and so forth. And we know the Prophet ﷺ was not doing that. Aisha radiallahu anha, she actually narrates and tells us that once he became the caliph, he put all of his wealth into the treasury of the Muslims, and he just kept a very small amount for himself because he felt like he should commit to the state as the leader. And so she said that when Abu Bakr died radiallahu anhu, that he did not have a penny to inherit. La dinar wa la dirham. That Abu Bakr did not leave behind any wealth for inheritance. Meaning what? Meaning his wealth was strictly for the needs of his family, and the rest of it was distributed through charity and so forth and put into the treasury. As a matter of fact, towards the beginning of the caliphate of Abu Bakr, Umar radiallahu anhu, once he noticed that Abu Bakr is coming into the marketplace, and he looks like a man who's looking to try to do some trade and get into some work. And so Umar says, "What are you doing?" And he says, "I'm going to go try to make some money to feed my family." He said, "You have been given the responsibility of all of the affairs of the believers, and that's your role. And here you are going into the marketplace. You're going to go wheeling and dealing. How are we going to reconcile the affairs of the believers at this point?" So Abu Bakr said, "What do you suggest?" He said, "Well, I think now that you are technically an employee of the state, that obviously the treasury should cover your stipends, should cover your salary." Abu Bakr said, "No, then what would people say? I'm taking money from the treasury of the Muslims." He said, "No, you're not taking it. We need to realize some sort of a specific set stipend that you would take that's ma'roof, that is known to be reasonable and good." And so basically he went to meet with Ali ibn Abi Talib and Abu Ubaidah bin Jarrah, who was put as the responsible figure for the treasury. And they agreed with Abu Bakr about a couple of garments for the winter, a couple of garments for the summer, and a daily stipend of barley and dates and water. And that was his wealth. That was his, big salary check as the caliph of the Muslims, mashallah. So now when we look at Ahnaf ibn Qais, he tells us the story of how Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, how he approached this concern of worldly matters as the caliph. So Umar had become the caliph, and he sent out Ahnaf and a whole other group to an expedition to deal with the Persian Empire's outposts. And so they went on this journey, and they were victorious in their battle with the Persian Empire. And when they settled in this area around Persia, which is in modern-day Iraq, they found that they were selling in the marketplace this very nice, fluffy, white garments. This is not silk, so they said, "Well, let's buy these. These are very nice. There's nothing wrong with this. Let's buy them and wear them back." So they put on these nice, white, shiny garments, and they came back. And then whenever they came into Medina, they went to go meet Umar. So when they walked into Umar's house, he looked at them and then turned away from them. And they said, "Salaam alaikum." He did not return salam. And then they walked up to him, and then he walked away. And they were like, "What the heck is going on with him?" And so they went to Abdullah bin Umar, his son. And they asked Abdullah, "This is what happened. We went to your dad, and now he's acting like he doesn't even know us. He was being very rude. He didn't even say a word. No salam, nothing." So Abdullah, he looked them up and down and said, "Well, I'm assuming that my father did not like these strange clothing that you have worn back that looks a bit extravagant. He's thinking that maybe this is israf." So they said, "Fine, then let's go and change." So they all went and changed into normal clothes, and then they went back to Umar. And when they came back to Umar, he said, "Salaam alaikum, welcome back, mashallah." And he hugs them and everything, and he didn't mention anything about the outfits at that point. And they had brought with them the camels have the what you call the spoils of war. And so they bring it, and then they're telling Umar, "Here's what we have brought back with us," and it has all these different things that they have brought in. And so then Umar is distributing. He says, "What is this big container here?" They opened it up, and he sees all of these fresh fruits that you don't see in Arabia. They don't have these. They have some grapes, they have some dates, and that's pretty much it. So go ahead, try some, Umar. And he took a bite of some fruit that they brought back. Obviously, it had gotten real ripe. And it's all juicy and everything. And he's tasting it. And he said, "Oh my goodness, this is a big fitna." He said, people will start killing their own family member for these things. What are you bringing back from Persia? You're going to ruin us as an ummah. And he said, "Distribute all the rest of these fruits with the children of those who died in the battle." Subhanallah. And so then he warned everybody, the tests of the wealth of Persia and Rome are going to come to us. We're going to be blessed with victory, and then we're going to take their wealth. But the question is, how will we use their wealth? How will we feel about their wealth? And so that was his concern. He gave a big sermon about it in the next Friday. But people were generally concerned that Omar was a bit overboard on his idea of asceticism. So there used to be political ambassadors that would come from Persia or from the Roman Byzantium Empire, and they would come in, and some of the other Arab tribes would send in some leader from their tribe, and he would come all official and representing his tribe. And then Omar is there, and he's got his wool stitched garment with like 15, 20 patches in it, particularly on the rear where he's been riding camels and horses and donkeys and so forth. And so they have to patch it up because it gets kind of torn down there, it gets worn. And so they went to the companions of the Prophet. They said, you guys know Omar best. Those that were closest to him, they went to Uthman and Saad and others, and they said, can you please find a way to talk to him? So the companions said, well, we should probably send Ali. Ali is, very strong and decisive. He's respected for his jurisprudence. So we'll send Ali to go tell Omar our concerns. So they sent Ali ibn Abi Talib, and he went, and when he was on the way, he felt like, got shy, and, maybe Omar's, doing something spiritual, I don't know if, I'm the right person. So Ali then went to Hafsa and Aisha, his daughter and the mothers of the believers. And so he went to them, and then Hafsa said, this is definitely not something that I would want to do. So Aisha said, I'll do it. I'll take care of this. This is my responsibility. So she approached Umar, and she said, Umar, God has blessed us all with the opening of the world to Islam, and we're victorious, and we have, expanded borders, and Persia is toppling, and Byzantium is definitely feeling the pressure of our existence here, and they know that we're not just going to be destroyed like they thought. So we should have a little bit more of some diplomatic relations with them. And so he's like, what do you mean? And she says, well, maybe you should just get one special garment that you would wear that would be more like accepting this, or just one, any simple garment that you would wear, and it's nice and new and all of that. And he said, I have two. I have one with khutbahs, and then I have one that I travel with. So I'm fine with these. She said, well, people are concerned that it's worn and it has all these patches. And he said, look, I don't know what you're trying to tell me, but didn't the Prophet have some patches on his garments? And didn't he wear wool? And didn't he sleep on the ground? And he went through a laundry list, as they say, of examples of the Prophet's asceticism. And so he stood his ground, and then Hafsa was standing there, and he told Hafsa, don't you remember what happened with the Prophet ﷺ? So we know that the Prophet ﷺ used to sleep on a simple mat on the ground, and he laid his head on the leather, pillow. And so we know that one time you got a nice padded mattress for him with a nice pillow, and you gave that to him, and he accepted it from you. And then for the only night that we can remember, the Prophet ﷺ slept through the whole night, all the way through, hearing the azan of Bilal. And then he got up and he blamed you that you gave him too nice of a place to sleep. And so she said, yes, I remember that. He said, this is the thing that I don't want to have happen to me. I don't want to get all comfortable and things like this with this world. I have big responsibilities here as the leader. I mean, when we look at the sense of concern about a leader's responsibility to be not materialistic, to not get into the riches and the wealth, because that will distract one from what is important, and that is proper leadership and so forth. And so they went to there's no question that they went to extreme, feeling like that's in the best interest of the ummah. They didn't force this on anyone else. None of these companions were telling other people, here's how you live, this is Islam. That was their own personal spiritual emphasis for their own benefit that they felt they needed. And this is what some of those scholars that focus on spirituality have always said. For different people, that may be a different thing, So even in the time of Uthman, we saw that Uthman would also wear pretty much simple clothing. He had probably more than two thobes, but he did wear simple wool clothing. He did wear stitched and patched clothing. he would also often sleep his siesta nap in the mosque. And he would lie up against the wall in the mosque for his siesta nap. And he would sometimes wake up, and then he would get up, and people would see on his side that the pebbles, the imprints of the pebbles. And so people would say, "You're the Uthman, you're the caliph, you're the leader of the Muslims. This is beneath you. You need to go sleep in a nice shaded place in your home, and you don't need to be sleeping on the floor like this." And he said, "No, that's not true. I'm Uthman like I am today and as I was before. And when the day of judgment comes, I want to be that same Uthman, spiritually speaking. I don't want to become the new leader of the worldly comforts, because these are practices he had before he was caliph." And unfortunately, Uthman was assassinated. But in general, the people who lived around the caliphs, they did not need an entourage to protect them from the dangers of assassination in general, because people knew them, that they were honest and upright people that were just and fair and reasonable. They were asked to become leaders. Their authority was based upon mutual consultation with the ummah, and so forth and so on. And Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu also is narrated to wear two patch garments. So after he was one of those that were trying to tell Umar, once the thing came into his lap, he changed up and became extra careful himself as well. And so he would wear these patched up garments. And when he was brought the best things from Iraq, he would reject them, saying, "Look, these are not necessarily haram, but I want to be very careful not to become comfortable with these worldly blessings of these empires that we saw fall so easy, because they were not built on morality. We want to stick with our spirituality and our morality and not be caught up in materialism." So may Allah preserve us and make us among the best who follow these examples in a realistic, reasonable way in our circumstances, and to take the lesson at hand, which is, as in Ramadan is our point, that we are learning to break free from the worldly attachments of our desires and to prepare for the hereafter. Jazakumullah khairan. May Allah bless your day and accept your fast. We'll see you tonight, inshallah. Jazakallah khair.